A very warm welcome to all the enthusiasts who have joined with us today. This is the second session of the podcast series held along with the AI Summit 2022 organized by Asiata Digital Labs. I am Vinod, your host for the day. Today we have a very novel yet intriguing topic. I can even say that it's a concept taken in for discussion, the Metaverse. So before going on to the depth of the topic, I would like to put forward you a bit of detail about the AI Summit. So continuing for the second time, ADL AI Summit explores the future of AI and looks at how recent developments are impacting different industries. I am happy to say that this year's theme for AI Summit is also Metaverse, and it will revolve around how developments in AI and the Metaverse are driving business growth. We have a podcast series, and of course today is the second day, a Geeks Hangout, which comprises of interactive sessions led by global experts for AI and ML, and the two-day AI Forum, which consists of panel discussions and keynotes. It will be live streamed on the 18th and 19th of November, that is this Friday and Saturday. You can find more information about the lineups, topics and the speakers from our ADL AI Summit website. Do register free and join all these sessions. Taking you back to today's podcast, Bridging Reality with Metaverse through AI, sponsored by OneLexiicon. We will be having a Q&A session towards the end. Therefore, if you need to clarify anything, please put it on the chat. I will direct it to our two speakers. So for today's discussion, we have two esteemed personalities joining. First is Chris Lewis. If I give a brief introduction on him, Chris has over 30 years of experience working in telecom and adjacent industry sectors. Basically, he has covered all the aspects of telecom industry. Currently, he works independently as an industry expert. Chris is registered blind throughout his career and a leading user of assistive technology. He is well known for offering a unique perspective on the emerging telcos and networking markets and how they fit into the broader emerging digital landscape. Since Metaverse is also an emerging digital technology, let's see how his insights would help us get a better perspective of this concept. Welcome to the session, Chris. Let's have a fruitful discussion today. Okay.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Okay, great. Along with Chris, we do have Vinod. Vinod Samarawickrama is the former Managing Director, Country Manager of Ericsson Sri Lanka, and he has over 25 years of experience in the industry creating and facilitating the technology for good. Currently he serves as the Manager Connectivity Program APAC at Meta Inc. Singapore. Vinod is playing a crucial role in improving connectivity for Metaverse adoption. All in all, he is an inspirational leader, innovator and also a sportsman. Who would be better than him to take an insight on the broader picture of Metaverse? Vinod, we warmly welcome you to today's session and hope you will also enjoy it.
Hello everyone.
Okay, let's start our discussion. So the ultimate question, what is the overall picture of Metaverse? If you start with me, honestly, I always used to wonder whether Metaverse is an extension of the current social networking aspects we have, or whether it is extending the augmented reality and virtual reality, or commonly known as AR and VR, which we use in gaming, to other sectors such as education and health, or whether it is about the controversial topics such as cryptocurrencies. So if we read an article or watch few videos on Metaverse, I'm sure you will always come through a person wearing a VR headset and having an identical avatar and moving on the graphical space. But what really is Metaverse? So let's clear this out first. So Vinod, I need your input first on this. What really is your picture on this whole concept of Metaverse?
Yeah. Anyway, thanks ADL for the invitation first of all, and I'm super happy to be here with Chris, joining this session. So looking forward for a fruitful discussion again. So what is metaverse? So a lot of people these days, is a very hot topic, and a lot of people define this in a different ways. I think there's no right or wrong answer, but in my opinion, the metaverse is very keywords: the immersive internet, number one, and enabled by a next generation compute platforms. Those are the two keywords. So I'll probably go into a little bit of details why I say that immersive internet and next generation powered by next generation compute platform. So to go back to 1980s. So when you look at the platform evolution, sorry. In 1980s, we had the mainframes, so which is the first generation of compute platforms, where we had the IBMs and all this stuff. And in 1990s, so we saw the invent of desktop and laptop by 2000. So that was what I call the second generation platforms, where we experienced the internet on a 2D screen. And then by 2007 to 2010 era, invent of Apple iPhone, and then we experienced the mobile platforms. So in both the second generation and the third generation, which is mobile platform, we experienced the internet on a 2D screen, which we are still do. The fourth generation is actually the metaverse generation, where we will experience internet on an immersive form. What does that mean? So actually, if you look at, if you're going on to buy, say, e-commerce, so you're actually inside the internet. You're inside that store. You feel like you're part and parcel of that store. So again, so internet is amazing. So potentially you will not spend more time on the internet, but it's actually your time is spent more full way, more meaningful way inside the internet. And then in order for us to enable this kind of experience, we need the next generation of compute power. So I think we will go into a little bit of details along the way. But I will take a pause, and I think probably I'll hand over to Chris for his definition of metaverse.
But Denise, do you want to ask me a particular question, or shall I just pick up on where?
Yes, please, Chris, go ahead. Go ahead. Like, give your interpretation. Like, what do you think the metaverse is?
So, and I think we're all very clear that we all have our own interpretation. The reason for this is that in the past, we all had our little pockets of expertise, whether it was social network or computing or telecoms. And actually what the metaverse does to us is actually change the world, flips it on its head. And in the past, we thought about technology first, and we eventually exposed it to the customers. And certainly in my telecom world, the way the telecoms companies designed and developed the networks, whether it was the telephone network or more recently the data networks and IP networks, that we sort of exposed it to the customer eventually. But what's happening now, and to go back to Vinod's point about the next generation of the internet, we are now having to react to whatever gets thrown at the network. And so I call this the outside-in model, where whatever we as individuals on a personal level, or as business, or as society, whatever we want to do, we've got all these sensors, we've got all these haptic feedbacks, we've got all these virtual reality goggles. They're all reaching into this, as Vinod called it, this compute platform, which is made up of not just compute, but compute, storage, networking, analytics, and obviously security. And so that everything is reaching inside this incredible global platform to extract the services that need to support activities. And and we can do that because the ability to bring these things together, leveraging cloud and leveraging the different forms of broadband that get delivered through the fixed and the mobile networks. So all of the devices that we use for ourselves, for our businesses, for society, sounds very grandiose, but it is all about that. We can begin to wrap a service around the way we want to do things. So the limitations of technology in the past, as Vinod said, from going from the mainframe to the PC, into the smartphone era, those limitations are gone. And the connectivity that we can deliver as an Axiata or as other telcos around the world actually will support all of those different interactions. And I'll give you one very practical example of this. Listening last week to somebody from Bosch, the major German industrial organization, talking about the automotive industry. They say that they've had massive sensor networks in their factories, sensing whether whatever robots are doing, whatever people are doing, and they've had massive telecoms networks. So bringing these two things together, that gives us this ability to then immerse ourselves into this incredible world. So the metaverse is not one thing; it'll be many different things, but it's bringing together all of these different technologies. And actually, to the point of this event this week, it's allowing innovation to be brought in by the people who want to develop the applications and bring those services to the surface. So there's a lot of discussion about, I think you said in your introductory notes, is it a new social network? Yeah, of course it is. Is it a new way of living our lives as individuals? Yeah, of course it is. Is it a new way of running businesses? Yeah, of course it is. So we have to be careful with these big concepts like the metaverse, to be very careful. Yes, it can do all of these things, and therefore the ecosystem that is required of suppliers to deliver against this potential is different in every sense. So
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, so I guess they interpreted as like it's immersive internet and new gen computer platforms, and I think Chris explained how connectivity among every domain has made it easy for this concept to come to life. So next, since we have a general idea on this concept right now, let us go back to the very beginning. Like, the thing that keeps bugging me is actually how and what led us to this whole concept of metaverse, and what is the origin of it. Vinod, you started explaining with mainframes, so could you help us understand how this whole ideation process of metaverse happened, and how it evolved from the current social networking and gaming aspects?
So I think, in my view, it's a basic human need, I guess. So as human beings, we experience the world in 3D always, from when we are born to until we die, right? So now all this time, as I said, whatever we experience on the screens are more or less 2D, and we never had that 3D experience as we are in the real world. So now we have the innovation, the technology, the powered by cloud, and the communication networks, which enable us to create this 3D world. So now companies are innovating so that we can eventually have that 3D experience with a lot of innovation, a lot of capabilities, a lot of something that you can think beyond, where you can have that in 3D form. So it's number one is the human need to have this 3D experience, enable, or the companies like Meta and a lot of other companies has went on this path to innovate this, right? So that's number one. I think it's the 3D. The number two is I think again I touch there are 4 elements, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so there are 4 elements which will come bring it together to make a fantastic. Number one is the device ecosystem. So the device ecosystem, in the past we didn't have that. Now we have seen a lot of VR, AR devices, and the very high definition cameras, 360-degree cameras, and all this stuff in the market. And so now the device system is evolving, and there are devices where we can have this 3D experience. Number two, now with the the creators, number two, the creators are now being coming into the market, and they are basically learning new languages, how to create new content on the 3D world, on the metaverse world. The third one is the platforms. So we had, like in the past, the mobile platforms, computer platforms. So now they are evolving into metaverse platforms. So you need to have platforms to run these applications, and we should have the right platform in terms of the cloud infrastructure. And we have to have I think Chris touched upon as well. So we need to have the right platform to manage the security. And then maybe the last one, maybe probably the payment, because you're going into this world. You should have some sort of very secure kind of way of payment, because there'll be a lot of transaction is going to happen. A lot of commerce is going to happen. So how do we manage this billions of transactions on the metaverse, and what's those payment platforms? So, and then across this thing, governance. And then the last one is the most important one, is the connectivity. If you have all these three things, if you don't have the right connectivity, we will never be able to experience that 3D experience in the real term. So we need to compare to the past, the 3G or the 4G era, where we looked at the data download. Now here we are coming into a different world where we are more depending on latency on the metaverse, because it's not only download speed, it's a download speed, upload speed, and the latency. So we need to have all these three elements in the right format and the right the levels, so that we can have that fantastic experience everyone is talking about.
Great, thank you, Vinod. I think Vinod greatly explained the 4 elements of the metaverse. And moving on to Chris right now. So Chris, I would like to know like how artificial intelligence or AI plays, like what role does it play in this whole concept of metaverse?
I think as an analyst, Daniti, when I'm looking at the way the industry all comes together, I mentioned security at every level. I think AI has a role to play at every step of the way. And if you think what I described in terms of this outside-in model, where whatever we're doing in our personal and business lives, it wraps a service around us. AI has a massive role to play, to Vinod's point about bringing together all of these different lines of communication to make sure that they are secure, it's rendering the right service, the lowest latency. And in fact, in some ways, Vinod, I think there's even a 4th dimension, and possibly even a 5th dimension to this, because if we are going to truly create a metaverse in which we experience the outside world virtually, then we need to get smell, and we need to get the feeling of fresh air, you know, and we need to get. I was at a Mobile World Congress in February. I was at an Ericsson booth, and they had a metaverse factory example. So a digital twin of a factory, and you're literally walking through it. It was a bicycle factory, and I love bicycles, so I was very pleased it was a bicycle example. And going through it, and they were actually projecting the smell of the grass as you cycled away at the end of the production of the bicycle. So I think that there are so many elements, the immersive nature of what metaverse creates. And I totally agree, Vinod, this move from 2D to 3D, and perhaps we should call it immersive 3D or 4D, because we're going to have the sense of smell and touch. And these things, and as we add all of these sensors, as we add, whether we call them wearables or whether they're parts of our home environment in terms of, microphones, speakers, even, haptic feedback pads, all of these have got to be synchronized. So if I would add another layer on top of yours, Vinod, because I think there is not only is it about the bandwidth that we deliver through fixed and mobile communications, not only the latency, but also the synchronization of all of these moving parts. You think how many, literally trillions of sensors and things around the world have to feed into this metaverse. Then the role of AI is to make sure that the right bit of information is combined with the other bit of information coming in, and then rendered to the user in a way that it makes sense as a human being, and of course in the automation of factories. So I think to Daniti, the question you asked me is almost an impossible question, because AI in my mind is part of everything. So within Axiata's own environment, AI has a massive role to play, delivering all of the connectivity that Vinod talked about. And then when it comes to our office environments, our home environments, just think of AI in the way that it will be used to deliver the service from our point of view as individuals. So building up the services, delivering it in a way that is suitable for you as an individual, or Vinod or myself as an individual, and managing our home environments. So there is pretty much every step of the value chain and the supply chain, and including the payment. Let's take Vinod's payment example. There will be an AI engine in there somewhere helping my 89-year-old mother negotiate her service with her telecom provider. So AI, AI is really, it says what it is in the two words, right? It's artificial intelligence, but it's the intelligence to take all of the data that's available, to understand it, to learn from the patterns that are happening, and then to interpret the data for the best outcome from whoever you are. So the best outcome for Axiata, or the best outcome for Chris Lewis, or the best outlook for Vinod. And I think that's where AI comes in. And AI has been, I started looking at AI almost 40 years ago in a sort of machine translation, language to language translation environment. And we were very naive, very early developments then. But the potential as compute power has increased and everything else has changed around us, and all this massive outside in, we just have elements of AI everywhere throughout our lives.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Vinod. I think Vinod explained the 4 elements, and I agree, Chris. AI can be the 5th element as well, because it's kind of the foundation of where Metaverse is built. So now we have a great idea on the concept, origin, and how AI fits in all of this. So as today's topic suggests, bridging reality with Metaverse through AI. So is the real world really dissimilar to the Metaverse? Chris, what is your take on this? How close is the Metaverse to the real world?
Well, it's a bit of a philosophical question, isn't it? Apart from anything else. So in one version of the Metaverse, we talk a lot about digital twin. So we build these parallel models of let's say the factory I mentioned. So the factory is a great example. So you digitally twin it, you can analyze it, you simulate what's happening, and therefore you can model it and learn from the model and then implement that in the real world. So there's almost like a parallel. If we're talking science fiction, there's a parallel universe in which we can use all of the analysis, all of the data input, all the compute power to model and better understand how things work. Now then, as we develop that, how close is it to the real world? Well, I think gaming is probably the best example today about how close we can get. And I'm not a gamer, but I know plenty of gamers who thoroughly enjoy the whole experience. The whole notion of the headset immersing people into it. Yeah, we're very close to it. Is it a bit clunky still today? Yes, it is a bit clunky, because the way in which we render those images to people through a set of, a big headset, we need to go through that consumer electronics miniaturization of the headset down to literally a pair of glasses like this to give the information to your eyes and the quality of sound into your ears. But that world is very, very close, and we know we can render it. In some ways, the move to the next generation of mobile, the move to 5G, or whatever, and to 6G for that matter, combined with more fiber output out there, combined with the cloud, as Vinod talked about, we're in a position where we can put the compute power, along with all the other activities we talked about, as close as we need to where the activity is taking place. So to go back to my digital factory, my twinning factory example, we can have that compute power where it's required. And that's very different to the old world, to the world where everything was very centralized. And when we had to go back to Vinod's mainframes back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, so you were sending loads of information back. What we're doing now, with the ability to have compute power, as we say, at the edge, and to render that through cellular and through fiber, wherever fiber is available, actually means we can build this environment very, very quickly. Now, of course, to Vinod's point, we need to follow the money. We need to be able to make sure this is paid for and it's done on an efficient basis. But that's what we're doing. We're delivering compute power through cloud with all the security wraps we talk about, all of these things. Yes, it is very close to reality. So two things. There's the parallel reality, the parallel virtual world where we can analyze and model things and design new things. And then there's how that then drifts into the real world and affects our daily lives. You know, think of the smart speaker example. The way we use smart speakers in our homes today, we begin to control the environment, the lighting, the air conditioning, all of our media devices and so on. You know, that is using major amounts of what we might think about the metaverse in the future, but it's bringing it closer. So it's changing the way we interact with it ourselves as well, because we're no longer just talking, we're no longer just typing in and doing things like that. But I think I think there's a very important sort of philosophical thing about how we as humans communicate. And just to take one step backwards, if I might, Daniti. So we, you know, as humans, we started off literally grunting and gesturing at each other. And then gradually we developed all these different methods of communicating. We developed writing, we did languages and writing, we put it into print. We then turned that print into electric. We used typewriters. For those of old enough, use typewriters. I certainly did when I was a child. We then developed computing, and we turned we digitized that text, and then we've gradually gone almost full circle. And now through smart devices, we're now grunting and gesturing, aren't we again? So we've actually gone completely through a cycle in terms of the way we communicate. And I think that the ability, we can choose any different form of communication, whether we want to talk or gesture or you know, or make signs. So I think the technology that we're developing is much better placed now to mimic and improve on the way we communicate. So and one of my issues with the telecom world and the compute world as a whole is that we tend to think about the technology all the time. But actually, we're getting to a stage now where it's really about what we're trying to do, what in networking we call intent-based networking. But you know, it's about what are we trying to do as individuals, as businesses, or a society. And we can pull that technology out of the cloud and out of the metaverse to support that. So I think that's the really fascinating change that we see today in the way that our industries are evolving, and the opportunities are enormous.
Thank you, Chris. I think Vinod can elaborate on this as well. What do you think, regarding the similarities and dissimilarities of the two words?
Yeah, so I think you touch upon this. You know, we going into virtual world from physical world. So now, if you take few steps back, metaverse is not all about going into immersive world. So it's a combination of physical world and virtual reality and augmented reality. So the technology is evolving. I believe when it comes to within the next decade, the hardware will be there. As Chris touched upon, your glass, you're wearing this glass, which can actually do everything. So it is a AR device, it's a VR device, it's your mobile phone, and it's everything. So you don't have to carry, similar to what we do right now. We're carrying this smartphone everywhere. So moving in the future, you will not be carrying a smartphone. Maybe you're wearing, there's a wearable, of course, for the compute power, and then you will have your glasses with you, and which can do everything. So if you look going to the VR, so the AR use cases, so while you're walking, you will have VR sort of AR type of applications running on your alongside, but you're still in the physical world, right? So instead of what we do is now currently we do the Google Maps, right? So there it's on your glass where you can see. So it's a mix of physical world as well as virtual world, right? So that's combining and then your for example, what I have seen in the labs is that you have your watch and wearing a glass, so you don't have to type this anymore on the screen. So the screen will be appeared on your in front. You just have to dial it. You just have to text it, do whatever you want on that. So it's combining your physical presence as well as your virtual presence. And if you really want to go into really immersive world, you just make this unit into a fully VR device. So that's how I think this technology will evolve. But I think this is a journey, rather it won't happen today. It's a journey. And then as Chris said, I mean, we will be able to smell it, taste it in the future, how you, all these things inside the metaverse as well. So, I mean, it's a journey again. And I think within the next decade, we should be able to witness all these things in practice.
Vinod and Chris, I think we all can agree that this is a combination of the two worlds rather than finding similarities and dissimilarities. So thank you for those insightful examples and remarks. I think for me, even it clarified like the facts I found like a little bit hard to grasp earlier. So before continuing, I have two reminders for the audience. First is that if you have any question, please post it on the chat. I can direct them to either Chris, Vinod, or both at the end of this session. And second is about the exciting gift that you will be able to take home if you answer correctly for our quiz, which I will be directing to you all at the end of this discussion as well. It's worth $1,000, so please give it a try. Okay, let's move on with the discussion. So, Chris and Vinod, next is sort of a vague question I have actually. So, up to this point, we understood that Metaverse is kind of a virtual replication of the entire universe, right? So, what about the aspect of governance? I'm sure it is like, we can go deep into that topic. Vinod, could you elaborate on this first, in terms of the governance of Metaverse?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a very, very important topic these days. So a lot of companies who are in this space now are coming together to form this a framework, how we should operate this, because a metaverse not a one place. So there could be thousands of metaverse. We are working together to form a fantastic experience for the consumer. So you should be able to, for example, buy something in this particular metaverse, and you can take that to the next metaverse. So how do you enable that? So you have to have the proper governance, proper framework to do that. So I think the industry is in a place where they are currently in discussion how to do it and setting up the right standard. I think in future there's a lot of standards will be published, and the APIs and things like that, so that everyone can have a safer and very interoperable metaverse across all these metaverses coming into play in the future. So things are happening. I think in near future there'll be things will come out how the companies will trying to govern this whole metaverse across so many metaverses.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Sorry, go. No, I think the issue for me is that we talk about the metaverse, right? There isn't and there won't be a metaverse. There will be many different areas in which we use the metaverse way in which we interact. So therefore, the governance of it is much more in line with regular governance, regular regulation in country and internationally. So I'm sure the lawyers are going to have a great field day, and they'll make a lot of money talking around this. But we have to be really careful we don't want to create a new thing which we need to regulate and govern, because the metaverse will be so much part of our lives. We therefore need to adapt the way that regulation and legal frameworks exist, because it's about the usage of data. It's about the way people's identity is treated. And these are all things that we've been wrestling with for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So yeah. I think we need lawmakers and regulators to think more broadly. So it's not just about the regulation of the telecom network. It's not just the regulation of Meta and the other hyperscalers and the big, those global players. It's about, it has to embrace everybody and everything, but ultimately it comes down to an individual, national level about how we want to manage these things. And therefore, I tell you what, the politicians are going to have a field day with this, because they'll want every country to be the center of the metaverse, and and that's not going to be the case, is it? We're going to draw on things from all over the world for the benefit of Sri Lanka or Singapore or the UK or wherever we happen to be.
So yeah, good point, Chris. I think let me give a very basic, simple example. How it will transpire. Now, for example, there could be a metaverse. You can go and buy certain NFTs, right? So you buy this NFT, and you want, for example, it's a painting. So this painting, you buy it in a different metaverse, paying Bitcoin or whatever the currency or credit card. And then you should be able to take this painting to another metaverse, which is your virtual house is in, and you should be able to hang that, right? And then when so number one, so how do you guarantee the authenticity of this painting? And then the governance frameworks has to be come into play. And then the next one is, how do you take this same painting without distorting it or losing that value to the other metaverse and hanging in your house? And then when you have a social gathering, you invite different friends from different metaverse, so they're part of different metaverse. They come into your house for a gathering. They should be able to see that painting the same form, everyone can see it. So there's a lot of technology has to come into play, and the blockchain technology, so that this experience is for everyone is the same. So it's a lot of complicated stuff we are talking about. I think the industry is talking about it. I think hopefully in the future, as I said, this is a journey we are taking. So we should be able to see all these things unwrap in the future, how we manage these and things like that.
But Vinod, do you think it also raises the question that the enjoyment of art and the consumption of art, like a picture, you can have a fake picture on your wall if it gives you pleasure, and if your friends think it's real, then isn't that where we sort of end up in this discussion?
Yeah, the real world, yeah, it is happening right now. So, but I don't know how it will end up in the metaverse world. How, because still learning, honestly. So,
we are still learning.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot of directions in terms of governance. So as Vinod said, it's really complicated, as well as what Chris described. It finally comes down to the individual's moral and ethical guidelines. So let's see what the future holds in terms of when this concept comes to life. Yeah. So I think with this, we will be having a small break. So refresh yourselves to tune in for the next half of the session. See you again in another 3 minutes. everyone, welcome back to our podcast, Bridging Reality with Metaverse through AI. So far we have discussed about the concept of Metaverse, how AI fits in it, and the similarities of the two worlds, as well as how we can govern it if we want to. Once again, I will put forward the two reminders for everyone who are listening right now. If you got any question, please put it on the chat. I can see that we have some questions right now as well. I will direct them to Chris and Vinod at the Q&A session. And about the quiz, it's a $1,000 worth gift, so give it a go. So I will elaborate on the process as well. So you will be receiving an email to your registered email address, which contains the link where you can answer the question. So I will be asking the question at the end of this discussion. Continuing back to our podcast, so far this has been an interesting discussion. So to make it more interesting, actually, let me put forward the question like I find more curious to get an answer. So is the metaverse really healthy, or are there any adverse impacts or effects or sort of disadvantages it can bring forward? So Chris, I need your help here. Anything disadvantages you feel in this whole concept?
Because we're opening up so many windows, so many opportunities. So there will always be a criminal element. There will always be some exploitation. That's why the security aspect, as I touched upon at the very beginning, is so important, because at every step of the way, we need to make sure our devices at home are secured, the content is secured, and all those new sensors that we're bringing into this metaverse, let alone the wearables and the virtual reality goggles that Vinod talked about. So I'm always curious when we have this major shift that we open up some exposure to dangers. There's also the issue of inequity. Now, what I'm really pleased about in across certainly the telecom industry, but across broader industries, and we've just seen COP27 take place in Egypt about the climate. So we have to be careful how much power we consume for doing all these things, because the assumption is that we can connect anything and everything, we can automate everything. But how much more power does that consume? We're building denser and denser networks. So there is a price to pay for building this new environment. So how readily do we build that? And then the inequity issue, we talk about, corporate social responsibility and ESG, environmental, and we have this new acronym, which is called equality, diversity, and inclusion. So we've got to make sure that we don't just get carried away designing this glorious ultimate metaverse environment for this immersive experience, but that we design an experience which can bring everybody into the fold. And we know today that despite all of the advances in communications, there are still at least 3 billion people not connected. So we have to be very, very conscious that the world is not totally connected today. A lot of the activity by Facebook, by Meta, pushing these new connections, trying to get more and more people connected, and all the devices we've seen through satellite, through balloons, through drones, trying to get everyone connected. We've got to bring everybody into this digital discussion, and I think that's where we still lack a bit, because we get carried away with the core at the core, the all-powerful gaming experience or digital twin factory experience. So I think having that step back and having that broader social view of what we can deliver here is really, really important.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Vinod, anything to add upon the disadvantages?
Yeah. So I think, over the years, industry has gone through many challenges when it comes to these type of topics, right? And if you look at the second generation and third generation era, so I think the companies has had many learnings how to, you know, prevent these kind of situations in the future. So I believe when it comes to, you know, by within the next 5 years, whatever the learnings and the mistakes and the, you know, everything what we have done, it will reflect positively on the metaverse. So of course, as I said, there could be a lot of other things coming into play with there's always people will try to exploit this, but still, and we will not have all the concerns, the issues we had in the second generation and the third generation platforms, taking it to the metaverse platform. So that's a positive, definitely. But again, I mean, what I want to say is that, you know, any technology, you know, as a user, you have to be smart about it. So you whatever you do, you have to, you know, give a little bit of thought and how you should use it. So maybe that's my sort of comment. So.
Okay, thank you, Vinod and Chris. I think metaverse is an emerging concept. So any technology can have adverse impact. So prevention is actually the better thing. So the time is ticking, and I will be moving to the last two questions for the day. And since we now have an idea of the disadvantage and possible mishaps of this metaverse, which is going to be a reality in the future, Chris, this is to you. Could you walk us through the aspects of diversity and how inclusion plays a key role in this regard, and touch upon maybe the disabled as well? I think you can answer this the way you personally feel as well.
Thank you, Denise. Yes, and I sort of touched upon it in my previous answer that, you know, bringing the excluded people into the fold is really important. Now, obviously, as a blind person, I've used assistive technology to do my job for the last 35 years, and that's a mix of screen readers from laptops, it's text to speech on my iPhone. It's obviously speaking into my iPhone to do translation. But what the metaverse brings potentially, and we're already beginning to see it today, is the ability to customize the communications channel to the individual. Now, to give you a little bit of context on this, there are over 1 billion people in the world who suffer from some form of disability. So hearing impaired is the biggest category, which is about 380 million. Vision impaired is about 285, and then it goes to cognitive, which we can't really measure. We don't really know people exactly how many fall into that category, and then physically impaired. But it's an enormous number. So, you know, roughly 1 billion out of a global population of 8 billion is a big market, and many of these are excluded. So the fact that in all of the sensor discussion that we just had with Vinod about smart glasses and, you know, haptic feedback, the ability to customize the service to somebody with poor vision or poor hearing or with a physical issue or cognitive issue, to render the information in a way which is best for that individual, is a massive opportunity. And by the way, it's not just important for the people with disabilities. It will mean that you can choose to be fully immersive without video. You know, you can choose to not have sound. And the mainstream market, in fact, in the world of design, we now talk about inclusive design, where in the past we used to design for the center, for the mainstream market. In the future, we're going to design for the edge, for the periphery of society. So all the people who are currently excluded. And by doing that, we then will get the center for free, which is a really important change in the way that the world is being developed. So yeah, it's a massive opportunity. And in fact, even in the telecom world, we talked today about you know, customer experience and customer interaction. You know, the metaverse will be a great opportunity to change the way that we interact with people, and AI will play a massive role, because all of the data that we have about our experience as a customer, and it's true for Meta, it's true for all companies, you'll be able to render the information to me in a way that I can consume it. And then in return, I can then communicate back with all these people in a way that suits me. So it goes back to the comment I made at the very beginning, that we're flipping the world on its head, or the technology world on its head. So in the past, we as people had to behave the way the technology told us to behave. You know, we typed text messages, we made phone calls, we sent emails. Now, because of the change, because of this flip towards the metaverse, we can actually communicate in the way we want, the channel will translate between channels. So if we send a text in, it might be changed into voice for somebody in a contact center. But it just opens up so many possibilities. And it means we bring new people into the market. It means elderly people who may have not learned how to use the internet will use their smart speakers and televisions to communicate. And it will bring more money in. The good news is it's a bigger total addressable market, and it means that everybody can then benefit from being online, whether it's playing games, whether it's shopping, all of these things. So I'm very excited about it. It's a massive opportunity.
Again, I think it's a 1 billion people, right? Something as Chris said. I mean, there's so much of opportunity. I'll give you a very simple example. What's happening right now? Now, just imagine person who can't walk, or the elderly person wants to really watch that final T20 game in Australia. So we have the technology which is already happening in this part of the world, that you can have the best seat in that stadium, and you wear that VR glass and you look to your right or look to your left. The person who's sitting next to you, you can see that person the real time, and the same way you see it if you are physically be there, right? So just imagine, number one, the people who can't be there because of there's some sort of a challenge. But the second one, the market will open up like globally for people to go there, without going there, and you will experience the same thing and much more. And you can select whatever the camera angle you want to select, which is already happening, which is already in our platforms as well. So just imagine the simple example which is happening now. So, but the evolution or the innovation will happen, moving forward, and which will create so much of use cases, so that all the people who are excluded in the last few decades, they will be part of it. So I'm super excited as well, how this will enable better future for a lot of people.
And of course, and Vinod, what's important in that example you just gave is that it's not just for people with disabilities. So people not even in the MCG can also enjoy it. So it's part of the extension of the media industry. It's part of the extension of the gaming industry, and that's why one of my big missions, and I do a thing called Inclusively, which is trying to get all parties interested in this inclusive design. There are benefits for everybody. So in the past, we used to deal with different disabilities in separate markets, and it was very expensive. And I used some very expensive kit when I was a student, $100,000 piece of kit to read a book out to me. That's now an app on my phone, cost me $5. So the democratization of everything, it's making the whole market so much more interesting. Massive AI implications for it, because we need the intelligence to render it in the way we want it. I thought what you were going to say was, of course, what you could do, you could choose the best seat in the house. You could also choose to be the batsman facing the bowler, or you could choose to be the bowler about to bowl the final ball. Because we're wrapping the intelligence around situations and rendering it in a way that everybody can consume it. That is such an exciting prospect.
Yeah. So it's exciting future on these things, which is real happening right now. So just imagine another 10 years down the line, this technology and the platforms will be capable of doing so. It's going to be a super awesome thing to witness.
Well, and actually, there's another thing that occurs to me that I mentioned my degree 40 years ago in computational linguistics. The ability to render in different languages. So if somebody doesn't want to communicate in English, we're already seeing this in pseudo real time, the ability to take whatever I'm saying now, to caption it, so people who can't hear actually get the captioning on the screen, but also to translate it in almost real time. We have the compute power, and we're getting very close to delivering that in a way. So language stops being a barrier. And I think all of these things, every situation you can think of, the way in your daily life, you will find examples where AI, and perhaps we should call it AI, perhaps we shouldn't even call it the metaverse. It's just the way we use this artificial intelligence to deliver the environment around us in which we can live and thrive and business and so on.
Okay, thank you both Chris and Vinod. I think that was a really fruitful discussion. So final remark, Vinod, like when do you think that this whole concept will come out of this alien behavior? Yeah, can you like give an exact time where this metaverse concept could become a popular culture?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I think so. This is again, as I said throughout. So this whole thing is a journey. We have now witnessed a lot of hardware coming into place, and again, there's creators are being they are super excited about creating content, and there's platforms being evolved from big tech companies. And again, most importantly, the connectivity, and then the fiber network is getting super good, and then the 5G is around the corner now. So it's important that you have the right technology and the connectivity. So with all these things, I think it'll be more or less within the next 7 years. We will see a fully AR VR combined use cases coming into the market. So, but again, I think the other thing is what you all will witness is that the metaverse will not be only on the AR or VR devices. So it will come to 2D devices as well in the near future. So all these companies will have the 2D version of these devices, because everyone will not be able to afford a VR or AR device. So the companies are thinking, how can we give the similar kind of experience to the people who still have a smartphone or the PC or the laptop? So there are a lot of research happening. How can we bring this metaverse kind of experience to 2D devices? So which is going to be part of it. I think you will see near future the 2D metaverse experience will evolve, and then which will basically evolution to the whole VR and AR devices in the future.
So Vinod, one thing which occurs to me when you were talking there is that in the connectivity world, the best connectivity is one you never even notice, right? It's invisible. It's just there and it works. And I think that's what we're aiming for in the virtual reality world, is that you almost forget, or you have to forget, you're wearing glasses. So it needs to get down to this sort of level of device and other wearables, whether it's a watch or whether it's other things going on in there. So I think, but I totally agree that to render it on a feature phone, a lot of the world still is on feature phone, not on smartphone. So that's where the intelligence comes in, the artificial intelligence, to render the service in a way that, somebody out in the countryside in the middle of Africa who's still on 2G, perhaps 2G, perhaps 3G, can actually still join in and can still contribute and can consume it. And if you think in the gaming world, you can go to one of these big stadiums, you can watch people, gaming, or you can be at home and you can do it, or perhaps you might just listen to the audio stream. We have to take it back to the reason I mentioned my philosophical view of how we communicate as people. That it's about the way we absorb information, the way we take information in. So I jokingly say to my children, I read through my ears, right? I can't read through my eyes because my eyes don't work. And so perhaps I'm more conscious of this, but the way the podcast world has evolved, the way media is evolving, it isn't always about going to that great big cinema experience. You might consume it as an audio book, or you might consider it as a podcast. So we need to think very differently about how we live our lives, but how we consume content, how we interact with this new universe, whether you call it a metaverse, I don't know. But.
Yeah, no. And I'll give you another a fact before we leave. So everyone would see this all VR headset, right? Now, why it's big? Why it's like that, right? So it's purely because all the companies wants to create your VR glass to the normal glass size. The challenge we have is because what we currently do is we do all the compute power, everything is on the VR glass, VR headset. So we don't have the technology or the connectivity power to do that processing in the cloud. So when we are able to do that processing in the cloud without disturbing your experience, that is the time where we will have that fully immersive AR, VR, mixed reality experience. You will have it. So yeah. I think the world is moving towards that. The more fiberization happening, 5G is coming into play, 6G will be there by 2030. So with that, I think we will experience all these things. But in the midterm, I think they will find out different kind of rendering technologies, whether you can render it on your phone or your watch or your Wi-Fi device, so that you can actually bring down the scale of this whole VR device to something smaller, so that you can wear it for a longer time.
Yeah.
Plus, it's not really heating the device, and then it's very bulky, right? So
Vinod, there's another level of development I should touch upon, which I think is, and it's called, we used to call it the brain-computer interface, where we literally have sensors on the head that pick up brain waves. Now, this sounds like real science fiction, but actually we are now very close to be able to pick up brain waves to interpret things. Now, obviously, this comes out from some people with very serious conditions like locked-in syndrome, where but we're actually getting, I find it quite a scary prospect, but we're getting close to be able to actually, that could be a trigger to do something, to help that immersive experience. I mean, how weird is that, to think that, we won't even speak, we won't gesture. There's actually a brainwave. There's a brainwave element to that. Sorry, Daniti, I jumped in.
I know. Yeah.
I think we had a great set of examples and great set of explanations to this whole concept. So that all in all, it was a fruitful discussion, and I hope the next decade is going to be really exciting in terms of the concept of metaverse coming into reality. So next is an exciting moment. I'm going to present you the question for the day, or rather the quiz. So I will now read out the question, and you can post your answer using the link you received to your registered email. So the question is, what is not a challenge for metaverse to become mainstream? What is not a challenge for metaverse to become mainstream? First answer is significant cost and time to introduce and maintain. Second, data privacy concerns and related government regulations. Third, the infrastructure is not developed all over the world. Fourth is advertisements are played when working in metaverse. So you have to select the correct answer, which is not a challenge for metaverse to become mainstream. Okay, do send us your answers using the link you received through your email. So I think we can now move to the Q&A session. So we have several questions as well. Let me direct it. So the first question is to you, Vinod. There are privacy concerns in the metaverse. Anyone with the data can create a digital twin of that person and predict the person. So it could be a significant risk for the person. So what is your opinion on this?
I think, I don't have a, sort of a, clear, direct answer, honestly. But I think the technologies will evolve for us to, determine that and overcome that for sure. And currently, I have seen in the industries, there's a lot of innovation happening in that field, and how we can basically safeguard the user and their identity, and moving forward the existence inside the metaverse. So hopefully within the next couple of years, things will evolve, and the solution will be part and parcel of the whole ecosystem.
And if I might comment, Dimitri, I think
sure.
So. Privacy of course is an issue. And one of the issues around identity. So one of my big questions for the metaverse is, in the metaverse, can I see? So does my digital twin see? So I can use do I identify as being disabled in the metaverse? I don't think I'm disabled. I think I'm, I just happen to have an eye problem. So there is an identity issue about how we as individuals identify ourselves. But I think there's also a massive learning issue with a parallel universe in which we can learn about how all this disability works. But ultimately, privacy, of course, is an issue. And what I think will happen, and I hope will happen, is as the metaverses open up, then the issue about privacy will become much clearer, because it won't be about being within one individual metaverse. We will see, and I think you mentioned this before, Vinod, actually, this notion of moving material or the virtual materials from metaverse to metaverse. And I think the gaming industry is talking about this a lot now, where, if you have your avatar in one metaverse world, can you take that particular version of you and move it into another one? So these are all privacy issues. We have to be a lot more open in the future to the way people, and I think it's part of what I described as this move to much more about the way we want to do things rather than the way the industry wants us to behave. So I think that will be one of the major changes. And it goes back to the regulation and governance that you asked us about before. We have to be much more open and transparent about, obviously, the way in which data gets used, the way that we behave. And I think we will all learn many lessons about this over the next decade.
Yeah. Thank you, Vinod and Chris. Let me go to the final question we have. So it's rather an interesting question, actually. So I think both of you can comment, but yeah. So Google Glass didn't work in the past. So why would you expect that Metaverse can be successful this time? Adding to that, why is the trust kept in Metaverse diminishing? If I repeat it again, Google Glass didn't work in the past, and so why do you expect that Metaverse can be successful this time? And I think the person who directed the question is feeling like the trust kept in Metaverse is kind of diminishing. So any reason to that? I think Chris can start and Vinod can add upon maybe.
I think the problem with the problem we face today, and this is the role of the analysts and all of us to understand it. Do we not trust what's out there? I think the relative power of people like Meta and Google and all the big guys, we love them and we want them to do well, but we also need to be a bit more transparent from a user point of view. I think we are so early on the journey. So we're so early on the journey of Metaverse itself that it is too early to comment, really. What I think we have to make sure is that it's not about the Metaverse. We should not be scared by the Metaverse. We need to put it in the context of different industries. So the gaming industry, the media industry, all businesses, and we need to make sure that the regulatory frameworks are in place that ensure our privacy, and that we use AI to expose the data in the way that we want to use it. So I do think we will gradually start to see a lot more awareness of what data is about our privacy, about our identity, and it will be up to the players like Meta and all the others to make sure that they deliver things in an open and transparent manner.
Vinod, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I think it's too early for us to honestly comment. This is just started, right? So the last year only of whole Metaverse word has been spread across the world, and everyone is now talking about it. I mean, the similar kind of sentiments were there when the internet was launched as well. So I think again it's too early for us to determine whether it's successful or not. I think we need to wait and see, I guess. And there's a lot of application happening, a lot of development happening. A lot of companies are playing a bigger role, a major role in these kind of spaces. The investments is being put on. So it's yet to see what's the sort of outcome along the way. So
and Vinod, I think it's very important to point out that one of the reasons the internet succeeded is because we all saw benefit. We saw a benefit of being connected. We saw the benefits of messaging, the benefits of social media. And it's up to the industry and the people designing the application to show the benefits to people on an individual and on a business level. And actually, do you know what? In some ways, we're the wrong people to ask. So one of my favorite authors is the Douglas Adams, who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And he had some very interesting thoughts about technology. And first of all, he said technology, if you call something technology, it means it's not finished yet, right? So you don't call a chair technology. So the metaverse is very much in technology in preparation. But the really important thing, which one of his phrases I love, he said, any technology invented before you're born and up to the age of 15, you just accept, you never question. Any technology invented between the age of 15 and 35, you embrace and you might even build a career out of it. Any technology invented after you're 35, you think is just wrong. So we have to be very careful as people. You know, I just turned 60. So and as an analyst, I have to embrace the technology and think about it. So we also have to think about the people out there who are going to be using all this technology. We've got to sell it to everybody. This is not just to those 35 to, you know, what the 35-year-olds, the Gen Z coming through. We've got to sell this to everybody. And the great news is the benefits of this are applicable to everybody. They're as applicable to my 89-year-old mother, you know, living on her own to bring services into her house, as they are to that bicycle factory I talked about. So the benefits of the metaverse are enormous, but we just have to be careful how we deliver it.
So yeah, just a final thought. I think I mean, I have personally seen a lot of use cases being developed. So most of the people around the world hasn't seen these use cases not yet come out, right? For example, there are a lot of use cases being developed under the commerce side. Of course, the gaming is one of the biggest already, right? So we shouldn't talk about it. But in terms of the entertainment, the health and fitness, massive. And the travel, people who are disabled, that they don't want to travel, you can actually use this you can travel to anywhere in the world and experience, you know, real life, you know, images and, you know, how you feel like. Education is a huge area a lot of companies are focusing on. And so there's a lot of industries are developing a lot of use cases for their own industry, right? So there's a lot of things happening behind the scene. Since it's still new, it's not yet come out in terms of a use case to, you know, as a mass scale adaptation. So when these things will come, if these solutions, the use cases are solving, you know, big problems in the world, yes, that's where this will get adapted and, you know, a mass adaptation will take place.
Great. Thank you, Chris and Vinod, for that great answer. I think all in all, we have to see what the future holds, right? So that marks the end of today's podcast. I will once again read out the question for you, the quest. So the question is, what is not a challenge for Metaverse to become mainstream? What is not a challenge for Metaverse to become mainstream? First answer, significant cost and time to introduce and maintain. Second answer, data privacy concerns and related government regulations. Third, the infrastructure is not developed all over the world. And the final answer is, advertisements are played when working in Metaverse. You all have to select the answer which is not a challenge for Metaverse to become mainstream. So you can post your answer using the link you received to your registered email. And we will be announcing the winners at the AI Forum, which will be happening on the 18th and 19th of November, that is this Friday and Saturday. Okay, thank you, Chris and Vinod. I think we had a really enjoyable and fruitful discussion. Thank you for sharing all those information and insider facts. It was a great discussion indeed. And we feel extremely grateful actually for your valuable time and input. So thank you once again for both of you. And for the listeners, thank you for joining with us. Hope you learned from the session and enjoyed the session as well. Do join with us tomorrow for the podcast on yet an interesting topic, the value of explainable AI. Same time, 12:30 p.m. IST, same way, register free and you can join through our YouTube Live. Thank you and have a nice day.